David, what's your favorite sense that God has given us?
My favorite sense. Oh my. I suppose it would be my sight. I don't want to my sight, which is compromised to begin with. I don't want to lose it.
Okay, that's a great question. So if you had to lose one of your senses, which would it be then?
Yeah, good. Is that the same? Is it the same question? So the one I wouldn't want to lose most of all, I think it would be my sight. If I was going to go without one, yeah, it probably would be my sense of smell. I could survive without that.
Okay, so that was my question. Like, do you like smell? What do you think the role of incense is? I've got a candle burning right now. It is, let me tell you, smoked cinnamon and hickory. It smells lovely in this office.
That sounds pretty good. I am easily offended by some smells. Like I personally, they injure me. Uh, so I don't know. This is weird. It's a weird thing to think about. But of course, at the same time, so maybe this is what it is. I'm hypersensitive to smells because there are some smells where it's like, man, it just puts me in a place, you know?
I mean, they do have that tendency, right? Like you could smell a certain cologne, and you're like, man, that reminds me of Mister Whoever when I was growing up at church, right? Third pew, he sat right there, and
Yeah.
I'm brought right back there.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this strange connection between smell and one summer I was cutting lawn for the Parks Department in Blue Earth County, Minnesota, and there I would listen to books on tape, audiobooks while I was mowing the lawn. And so there are certain smells, the smells of certain kinds of grass that are being cut that trigger specific memories of parts of novels, like Jane Eyre comes back when I smell when I smell the grass being cut. It's weird. It's weird, man.
Oh, that's good. Now, the reason I ask you this is because we're talking about Genesis 6 through 9, and Noah offers the sacrifice, and God smells it, right? There's a pleasing aroma to it, and it's fun to toy with. Obviously, so we have five senses, right? So I love Augustine. Whenever he runs into the number five, so for example, John 5, five roofed colonnades. He's like, yeah, obviously the Torah, but like, why is the Torah five books? Oh, that's because of our fivefold senses that God gave us. That's why the Torah has five books in the first place.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so now, how many of those senses are given to us as, anthropomorphically as things that God also perceives? So he smells a pleasing aroma. He saw all that he created, and it was very good, right? Um, he, the verb that's used for giving somebody leprosy is he touched them, right? He touched them, and then of course you got the finger of God, right? What else? What else are we
Yep.
missing? There's sound. He heard the voice of their cries for mercy.
Right. Isaac and Ishmael. So sorry, Ishmael and Hagar. Right. Ishmael means the God who hears.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then Hagar gives God a name, and she calls him the God who sees.
Aha,
So you've
that's
got
good.
you've got both you got both senses going on there. And which one are we missing?
Taste. Um,
Okay. Oh,
which of
yes.
course I mean, so there's a connection, of course, between taste and smell that makes them a
What is
little
it?
bit.
Is it like 80% of taste is smell?
Yeah, I mean, so it has to do. Like you think about. Okay, so this is maybe getting into the weeds, but I think maybe it is worth parsing out. So your sight perceives light waves, your ears perceive sound waves, air waves. Your taste and smell are reacting to chemicals that are like molecules that are being wafted in, put in contact with your sensory organs. Essentially, it's the same. It's the same mechanism. Similarly with touch, right? Like so, touch is physical contact between two things. So it's either light or air or matter, other substantive matters, right?
Right, right. And then of course you add in the incarnation, and these things take on a whole another meaning that he actually takes on flesh. So if he touched before, now it's like to an even more human degree.
Right. And of course, that's in the resurrection account that he's like, "Give me some fish." Does a ghost eat like I'm eating?
Right. Right, right. So do you think there's a ranking to to the senses?
So here's what I say. You can put it to the test. I say in the church, your ears are your most important sense. How do you know things in the church? Because God says so. And so sight is subordinate to that.
That's good. That's good. So, and this checks out with John 10, right? The sheep hear my voice, where, things can look good, but what is Jesus actually saying? So I think that's right. That's primary. But they all have a role. So the psalm will say, taste and see, right? Both taste and see that the Lord is good. These things go together.
Yeah, which makes me think of this connection between eating and fellowship. So when you eat something, it is incorporated into you. It becomes a part of you. And there's this image that it like when we hear it, it's shocking, kind of disturbing that God, that our God is a consuming fire, right? Well, that consuming fire does one of two things. It consumes and destroys wickedness, but also it consumes in the sense of devours the objects of its affection, right? Like love does. So the pictures, super romantic pictures of love are like, you end up with people saying things that at face value sound really weird, but you understand what they mean when they say like, I love you so much, I want to eat you up, right? Like this is from Where the Wild Things Are, right? We love you so, right? You know the book.
Yes. Oh yeah. Of course.
I'll eat you up. I love you so. So there's this sense of like incorporation that has to do with like the only way we can get at that is through like eating, consuming something, or like taking it in with your eyes, right? Fully taking everything in with your eyes, or listening intently, and it has to do with like the use of your senses for communion, for fellowship with another. And this is what God desires of us, which is why like he smells the pleasing aroma of the sacrifice. And it's not strictly speaking that he loves the aroma of flesh burned, animal flesh burned on the altar, but he loves your sacrifice. Like he loves the heart that is offering that sacrifice.
Right. I was thinking when you brought up Where the Wild Things Are and you said yummy, yummy. Are you familiar with the meme where it's like, man, song lyrics have gone so downhill lately, and then it's like, but here's a song from 1968, yummy, 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 I got love in my tummy.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Okay, so on that notion of sacrifice and desiring it, so I'm reading through the Odyssey right now, and I mean the gods are awfully petty. Most of them are, which is an interesting thing. And one of the questions they're always asking is, who made a sacrifice to me last, and how good was it? And what place do I want to go to? Like, who's going to offer me the best sacrifices? So I think there is this really glaring contrast between the Greek pantheon and their sacrifices, and then God, what he wants. Because for the Greek gods, they merely want the sacrifices. But what does God say? He's like, I don't want your burnt offerings. I want your heart, right?
Yeah. Well, this is back to John 10, the difference between the shepherd and the hireling or the wolves, right? What do the wolves want to do? They want to devour the sheep to fill their bellies. The hirelings want to utilize the sheep for their own profit. But what does the shepherd want? He wants to be with the sheep. He doesn't want them for their sacrifices. He wants them.
Right. And that's like the stopping point, right? That's what communion means. Right? And we think about going to church, having communion, and we've talked about this in the past, but why do you have to go to family dinner?
Because it's your family, right? You have to go because they're your family.
Yeah, and if you're asking that question, you're already losing.
I was thinking the very same thing with the kinds of questions that, like, when couples get into trouble and one of them says, "I don't know what you want from me." It's like the moment that you are saying that, it's kind of like, well, it's broken, because if this relationship is about getting something from me or me just giving you what you want, I've separated myself from the relationship.
Right. It's very transactional then, which is the exact opposite of what the good shepherd does. Because the hireling, he's like, you're a paycheck. But the good shepherd's like, no, like, I want to spend time with you.
So this is not something that Noah is falling into when he offers his sacrifice, right? I mean, it's like Abel as opposed to Cain. Cain is thinking of it transactionally. Abel is not. Noah offers the sacrifice because of course, what do you do? You show gratitude to the one you love naturally. And how, so I mean, really we're confounded as humans because how can you have communion with God? Well, unless he gives you the means to do it, you can't do it, right?
And part of the sacrifice is trust. So if you're sacrificing out of abundance, you're still relying on yourself. But you experience a worldwide flood, and there's not that many animals around. Now, you brought some onto the ark for the very purpose of being able to sacrifice them, right? But that means you're trusting that God is going to repopulate the earth somehow when you're going to sacrifice these things.
Yeah, that's really good. I hadn't thought of that before. And that's thematic, isn't it? I mean, it's funny because it's so fundamental, and the story occurs again and again. It's manna in the wilderness. Are you going to believe that there's manna tomorrow, or are you going to save some over for the next day? Are you going to believe that during that if you don't sow during the 7th year, God will give you enough in your harvest from the previous year to last you 3 years while the fields lie fallow? Will you believe it or not? Which ultimately, I mean, I think that there's this glorious unity in all of these things in the matter of trust and in what God's word proclaims, because of course, ultimately, the final test is when you close your eyes in death, do you believe that God will wake you up again? Like this point where you are ceding all control. Like even if you go to sleep at night, you're recognizing that you could be roused by something. If there was danger, you'd be awoken and you'd protect yourself or whatever. But like not when you lie down in the grave.
Right. That's the fundamental question. I'm trying to think, can you help me out here in Judges? Where is it where there's a huge drought, but the first thing he does is he starts sacrificing animals?
Oh. Boy,
like,
that doesn't sound familiar. Huh.
Is it Gideon or
There's a drought. I can search real quick here.
It's Judges 6, so it is Gideon, and they are being oppressed by Midian, and they're forcing them into the dens and the caves. And Judges 6 verse 5, for they would come up with their livestock and their tents, they would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted. So Midian destroys everything that the Israelites have. And then what does Gideon do? He offers up a young goat.
Okay. You mean, okay, I'm just tracking here. So Gideon offers up his father's bull. His father's bull at the end of after
he does that too,
altar.
but in
where's the offer? Yeah,
but in verse 19.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yep, gotcha. Yeah, and unleavened cakes. So he's just been hiding in the wine press, beating out this grain, threshing this wheat,
which is such an inefficient way to beat out wheat.
Yeah, right.
Right, like so. I mean, he's got nothing. Like a young goat, extremely valuable, and the best thing that he can do with it is sacrifice it to God.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, so God's promises concerning such things are so clear that the irony, of course, is that when you don't believe God's promises in these matters, you suffer the very thing that you were afraid of, right? So he offers the goat, and you can imagine apprehension about that because look, if I offer a goat, I won't have enough, right? We won't have enough to eat. But by withholding the offering, that's when you end up with not enough to eat, because God can just shut it off at any point.
That's right. Is how much of Christianity just comes back to trust?
It's the whole kit and caboodle, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, which is, so I was thinking about this because one of the first things that caught my attention in Genesis 6 was this, back to the senses and God's kind of appraisal of things. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were attractive. And so when you use your eyes, you are evaluating things. You're always making a judgment about them, and if only implicitly. So he saw all that he made, and it was very good. She saw the fruit, that it was a delight to the eyes. and useful to make one wise. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were attractive. So what's the problem there is that they're making an evaluation not on the basis of trusting God's word, right? So he has said, here's what's attractive, right? A faithful woman who can find, a godly woman, right? Who can find. And they're like, yeah, but she's hot, so she's gonna be mine, right?
How many of the world's problems, and I want you to put it in a percentage, is because she was hot?
99%, right? That's at least.
That's right. So Jay-Z's song, Let the Listener Understand, is wrong.
That's right. That's just making me think about it's making me think about this story that C.S. Lewis wrote about Helen of Troy, where you find out at the end of the story that she really wasn't all that she was cracked up to be. I think that's how it goes. So yeah, it's Menelaus. He comes in. He's like, "You're not the woman I thought I was fighting for." It's tragic. It's super tragic.
Well, what kind of woman would allow herself to be taken like that?
Right. Well, isn't that something? Like, I always think about this with adultery. It's like, wait a minute, you're going to cheat with the kind of person who would cheat on their spouse.
Right.
Right. So and there you go again, right? I mean, because of course the thing that's at stake in marriage, I mean, we have handled marriage the wrong way, I'm convinced, for a long time, in thinking about it primarily carnally, in terms of like, thinking of chastity primarily in terms of what you do with your body. That's key. Like, what you do with your body is key, but more important to marriage is what you do with your words and how you regard the promises that you make. And so, the exchange in adultery of faithful promises for fleeting physical attraction is the most absurd thing that you can do, right? And that's also in Proverbs too. It's like, what are you doing, son of my womb? What does she say at the very end of Proverbs? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. That's what she says, right? Do not give your strength to women and your ways to those who destroy kings, right?
Are you familiar with the saying that how different the world would look if Cleopatra's nose was only a quarter inch shorter?
I've not heard that. That's good. Yeah.
So Mark Antony, apparently he falls in love with her because her nose was so long. I don't know, whatever you find attractive, but if that nose was different, the geopolitics of the world completely different.
Right. Yeah. Huh. I mean, that's all of Proverbs, essentially, right? This is the basic gist of it. And again, it goes back to what's your primary sense here? Which one could you go without, you know? Oh, and there's another Greek myth there, right? Because it's Cupid and Psyche. So Psyche is Cupid's. She's wedded to Cupid, but she can't see him. She's been told that he's a monster, and every night she goes to bed not having seen him. She lives in a palace; it's glorious. And her sisters come along, and they're like, "You should really shine a lantern on him and find out what he looks like, because we heard that he's a monster." And the moment she does that, I mean, he's revealed to be Cupid, but because she's like insisted on using her eyes to evaluate this, as opposed to like perceiving by the word of promise, right? She loses it all. I mean, it is a redemption story in the end because he rescues her and all that, but still, that's the problem.
Oh, that's nice. How does he rescue her? Does he shoot her with an arrow?
He helps her when so it's the problem is Cupid's mother, Artemis, who's jealous of Psyche because Psyche's the most beautiful woman that ever was, and so Artemis / Venus, and so Artemis gives Psyche these 3 challenging tasks that would be impossible for her, and Cupid helps her with the tasks to kind of like bring things full circle. Anyways, yeah, fascinating story. Worth reading.
No, it's great. Okay, so talk to me about sons of God, daughters of men, and we addressed it last week, but who are the Nephilim?
I don't know. They're big, strong guys. That's all I got. I mean, do we need to know more about them? They're mighty men, right? That's what the conclusion is. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown.
Right. And the question then is, renown from whom?
Oh, sure. Sure. Probably the sons and daughters of men, right?
Right. Where's the glory coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense that, well, it puts it in perspective that the very next verse, chapter 6, verse 5, gives this description, which is, it's superlative in every way. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. and that's the evaluation of man immediately after it said, and these were the mighty men of old, men of renown, right?
So is this like, this is a play? This is the best you got?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's Lamech all over again. He's like, okay, who are we going to boast in? Lamech's our best one. And look at that guy.
What a guy.
Yeah. Okay, so in that same vein then, the very next verse raises this question that you need to answer. What does it mean? What does it mean for God to grieve? So he saw this so the Lord saw, unlike the sons of God, they saw and evaluated with their desires. God sees and evaluates with his perfect justice, and it grieves him to his heart. Grieved him to his heart. He regretted that he made man. What does that mean?
Yeah, is he taking ownership? He's like, this is my creation. And he's not saying there's anything wrong with him, obviously, because we know there's not. He gave us moral agency. I don't know if we have to overthink it. Maybe this is, so sons of God. So think about your children, and just imagine this, because your children are going to be great because you're a great father. But what happens when it just turns out it's a complete disaster, and they don't use the Buchs name well?
Yeah, you could imagine reaching a point like the Bible, the evaluation in the Bible. It would have been better for that man had he not been born, right? That's you can imagine such a situation,
right? And so my question is, where's the line? Because you compare this with like the prodigal son and the love of the father there. Obviously, he's never given up on his son, but here God has perfect judgment, and he knows it's too late.
Yeah, that's. I mean, this is the confounding mystery of God's sovereignty. It's like, does God look at it and say, they are beyond hope? Well, that's an unsatisfying answer, because we're all beyond hope unless God intervenes with his mercy. So somehow in his divine eternal wisdom, he has determined that thus far and no further for these people, right?
And it always comes through one person, right? So it's based on the righteousness of Noah.
Yeah.
That he's gonna save the world. And then the same thing happens in Genesis 12 with Abraham. And then Moses in Exodus, right? Because God then, he wants to destroy the Israelites. And he says, Moses, I want to restart this whole thing, and you're gonna be the guy who's gonna send the seed.
Did you ever read any Leslie Newbegin in seminary? I think it was maybe a class like ministry in a pluralistic context or something like that. The one thing that really I remember clearly is this term, the scandal of particularity. The scandal of particularity. So it's kind of it's counterintuitive that God would choose one and proceed in selecting only, and especially like on the basis of ethnicity here, apparently. So it's Noah for sure. Okay, good. But then it's Shem. I mean, it's like Ham and Canaan are done for. Japheth doesn't get the promise. Shem does. And then it's Abraham and not his father, right? It's Abraham and his descendants.
Right. But you've got to be particular, right? Because otherwise then it's just a non-personality blob.
Yeah, and I think the thing to observe there is that we in our sinful flesh would prefer that non-personality blob to the scandal of particularity, because there's a real chance that I might be excluded from that, right? So on the bondage of the will, Luther says we would prefer it if God damned no one and saved everyone, because then we wouldn't have to worry about anything. We'd have nothing to be concerned with, right? That's what we would prefer.
Yeah, psychologically it sounds great.
Yeah, right? But then on the flip side, it's like if God is all yes and never no, then what does that yes really mean?
Right. It's like having an open mind about absolutely everything. And you know what that leads to, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Your brains fall out.
Yes. So do you think it matters here? I've always wondered about this, or maybe I've noticed it before and formed judgments prematurely about it. When it describes Noah, it says, "And Noah found favor in God's eyes," without any explanation. This is a great Lutheran moment, right? For no apparent reason, God chose Noah. He found favor in God's eyes. But then he's also described as being blameless and upright, right, in his generation.
So are you saying intuite fide?
This is the question, right? So I'm actually was wrestling with this because Paul in 1 Timothy says you run into trouble with purpose and result clauses all the time. Okay, so when we use the word because, we use it all kinds of different ways to mean all different kinds of things, right? So for instance, Jesus says, "She who loved much, she was forgiven much because she loved much." Right? And what he's saying is you can see how much she was forgiven because you can see how much she loves, and not the way the Roman Catholics want to take it, and that is her love, her great love earned her great forgiveness. And Paul in 1 Timothy says, like, God showed forbearance to me because I acted in the ignorance of unbelief. Right? And it's kind of like, well, what do you mean by because? Help me out.
So it's better off being ignorant, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Which is not satisfying at all. So in what sense? Because you see the same thing with Mary, obviously, and then Abraham. And so here's the benefit that God has. He can see the whole timeline.
Yeah. That's right. And there's a benefit that Christians have, which is that we do get to look retrospectively through the lens of faith, right? So, like, if you are a Christian, you look back and you say, but for the grace of God, I wouldn't be who I am. Full stop.
Right. And I think this is a problem of viewing everything, absolutely everything, through the lens of justification.
Right.
Because it only takes you so far. Because if you're like, obviously we are saved by grace alone, through faith alone, on account of Christ alone, right? Like, that's an important question. But then if you're only going to read the Noah story through that lens, it's kind of boring.
Yeah, and in fact, it's much more satisfying to read it through the lens of James, right? Who could say, "Don't you see Noah was justified by his works because God told him to build an ark, and he did," right? So, like,
yeah, same thing with Abraham. And there's a part of it where God is justified too, when. So he justifies Abraham in chapter 15 of Genesis, but then God is actually justified himself in chapter 22 when Abraham is willing to sacrifice his own son. It's like God made the right judgment.
Yeah. Huh. And of course, yeah, that's good. And that's for our benefit that we see it, right? So God's calling and election is sure. He doesn't choose unfaithful people. he chooses, and in his choosing makes them faithful.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And then the question is, well, did he choose to make us faithful because he knew we were going to be faithful?
Right. And the history, so fill me in on that, but like the answer, it can't possibly be yes, because then we are a cause of our salvation, right?
Well, yeah, I hesitate to even really dive into it because I don't want to do the lazy thing and say it's a mystery, but what happens is the election controversy in the 1890s in the Missouri Synod was largely personality driven too.
Sure.
And this is the thing with all church conflicts. I mean, Arius was wrong, but he was probably a little bit of a jerk too. So didn't help anything. And so it's always personal. David, if I ever tell you it's not personal, it's really personal.
Yeah. When you say don't take this the wrong way, I know what you're about to do. You're about to stab me in the back.
Like, this is Anchorman, where Ron says, with all due respect, and he says something extremely offensive. And he says,
so good.
"You can't get mad at me. I said with all due respect."
Man, it's so great. I have been reflecting a lot lately about how universal things are and how people are not like people are not as unique as I mean, of course, yeah, we've all got our uniqueness, but human nature is very monolithic, and it's all the same everywhere.
Right. So here are the two pitfalls then on both sides, and I think we can avoid both. So if you say that God elects apart from viewing people in faith, part of the danger, and I'm not saying you're going to fall into this, but it opens the door to saying that God chooses arbitrarily and that faith has nothing to do with it. And then this is where Missouri Synod Lutherans get accused of believing in universal objective justification, meaning that faith plays no part in justification, which has never been our stance. That's the radical Lutherans. That's crazy talk, right? You have to actually believe it. Like nobody's that I'm aware of actually advocates for that.
Right, right. It's interesting that you used the word arbitrarily, which I hadn't really thought of before, but of course is connected to arbitrio, right? So de libero arbitrio on free choice, or Luther on bound choice, de servo arbitrio. Because of course the confounding fact is that only God makes free choices, and because they are free choices, we cannot assign any reason to them other than an internal reason, right? If there's an external reason for God's choices, then he is a debtor to something outside of him, right? He is contingent on something outside of him. And so it can only be because of something within him, which of course is his love, right? His love and his name, right? So he makes himself a debtor by placing his name on us, right? But that happens first of all because of something entirely within him.
So talk to me about the ransom theory of the atonement then. So the son pays the father, right, with his blood. That's the blood payment. But isn't there also a sense? I mean, Satan is involved in this transaction, right? He's the prosecuting attorney who makes sure that God is playing by the rules.
Right. So Satan speaks the truth in his accusations apart from Christ, right? He's got the law stacked up and he knows all the charges. And he makes the case in God's courtroom.
Yeah, right. So I'm saying, so one of the medieval viewpoints, I think it's medieval, but somebody articulated this where the payment's actually to the devil. Now, I think that has a lot of problems, but can you kind of see the validity to it a little bit at least?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so maybe you could say it this way. This is unfamiliar to me, but I'm thinking about like in the sense that the devil, that Satan is right in leveling charges against humanity. It can't be a sleight of hand or a breach of justice, because otherwise the devil would be vindicated in saying that God is who he claims he is, right? So the devil wants to call God a liar. This is what he does in the Garden of Eden. And he would be right if Satan levels these charges at humanity and there's no, and justice is just kind of abrogated.
Right. And then who owns humanity after Genesis 3?
Yeah, the prince of this world, the prince of darkness, right?
So he's giving the devil his due, but of course what's the devil do? He's a strong man who his due is to get bound.
Right.
So that must have been such a torturous thing to watch God die on the cross. And then I don't know what the devil was thinking. I mean, you can imagine the champagne bottles were being popped in hell, but then to realize, oh no, this is actually my undoing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is like when you play in a chess game. Do you play chess, Josh?
No, I'd like to, but I think I would become obsessed with it.
Yeah, it's easy to do that, especially because you can play on your phone anytime. But there's always this potential moment where your opponent makes a move that looks like a blunder, and so you capture the free queen, and the next move is checkmate, and that's terrible.
And that's beautiful because God does that all the time, right? Nathan with David.
Yeah.
Hey, here's this story. And then Jesus does it with the Pharisees. I mean, this is the sense in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, right? With the witch. they make a deal, right? And the witch thinks she's going to get the better end of it because God's going to be dead, and then she can just rule.
Right. And what's the term? There's this deeper magic that she's unaware of or doesn't reckon with, which is the same thing. I mean, this is the Christological thing. Um, the devil doesn't reckon with the depth of God's love. How deep he's willing to go.
Because he can't understand it.
Right. Right. That will be fascinating. I mean, I love that like John Milton has hypothesized about these things. We should read Paradise Lost and talk about it. But like what it means for a creature of God to rebel in such a way and to be so deluded. I mean, this is also characteristic of the devil, right? Just complete he's so self-delusion, so complete and thorough a liar that he has convinced himself of something that cannot possibly be true, that he's going to overcome the Lord, right? It's like you in the book of Job, you come before into the Lord's counsel and you're like, Job only loves you because you've been nice to him. And God's like, you think I'm an idiot?
So you're saying the devil is the first existentialist because he knows it's not true, but he's got to believe it, and he's going to wreak havoc for however many thousands of years this thing's going to go on.
Yeah. And that's something that has it infected human nature. I've been thinking about the universality of this, how much human nature clings to false hope. So on the one hand, I think about it theologically and like, why does the doctrine of penance work? And it's because you do feel better if you can go to the priest and he can tell you, just do these couple of things. You don't feel completely good, but it takes the edge off, right? It's like you broke a bone and you can take some Tylenol and just kind of ignore it for a little bit. But this is universal. Like, this is our general experience. So if you drink too much coffee, what do? You just find one article that says that drinking coffee is good for your health. And it's not true. It's not actually the silver bullet, but it's enough. It's just enough.
Yeah. This is why I want to read an article that eggs are bad for you again, because prices are outrageous. So then I'll just stop buying eggs.
That's right. Just give me the article. That's good. Hey, I got a question.
So
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. No, okay. Well, I was going to say, speaking about God's emotions, but if you got a question, it sounded really good.
Let's do God's emotions. I was going to ask you about the dates in Genesis 6-9, but let's do God's emotions first.
Okay, so talking about God being grieved. So rather than us saying, oh, this is just an anthropomorphism, which Moses is writing down so that we can understand it, I think what it is that God feels things on an even deeper level that then is translated to us. So only God knows what it's truly like to grieve. And how do we know that? Well, he had to watch his son die and then actually forsake him. So think about all sides of that Trinitarian transaction. What is the Father feeling when he's sacrificing his son? And then what does the Son feel when he's actually forsaken by the Father? And what's the Spirit's role in that? I mean, that's some deep emotions. So I think God feels more than we could ever imagine. Right.
And our perception of feelings is always tainted by sin. So I was thinking about this. We were talking about it last night in my home. The range of emotions that we imagine are only connected to sin because they're often connected with a sinful world. And yet, like take Paul, be angry and do not sin. So like it's possible to be angry and not sin. And of course God is. And that accords with his nature. And so what does it mean that God, I mean, all of these emotions have their origin in God. The ones that we experience, we can only experience them in a sinful world and with sinful flesh attached. So we don't know what that's like purely, but it is a remarkable thought experiment then to ponder, like, will there be cause for anger in eternity? And what would that look like?
Oh, sure.
Or grief.
Or the converse. So grief, right? So Revelation, right? No more tears.
For you and for me. But does that mean that God is done with grief?
Yeah. Have you asked him?
Somebody told me recently that I shouldn't say, well, you'll just have to ask God, because when you get there, you're not going to be concerned about that. You're going to be concerned about other things.
Yeah. I understand that, but part of it is we are inquisitive by nature, don't you think? So I think a lot of things that we think are trivial aren't trivial at all. And I'm reminded of this just watching a 2-year-old grow up. It's like every single helicopter that flies by, helicopter, helicopter, so, sun shining in her eyes, sun, sun. And that's great. I wish I had that childlike wonder. I mean, this is why we got to become like children. So I understand not wanting to ask God the stupid questions. That's totally fair. We don't want to boil it down to those kinds of silly things. But at the same time, I mean, God's the God who gave us this kind of sense of wonder too.
Right, and I think that there are for any kind of like a apparently silly question. I mean, okay, so like how many angels can you fit on the head of a needle on the head of a nail? That like what does Augustine say? Right, hell, there are special places in hell reserved for people who ask questions like that. But take this question about like what does it mean? Let's think about grief in eternity. That's actually is a very relevant question for Christians who recognize that people they love are not going to be in heaven, and it's impossible for us to imagine like feelings of joy, even if you posit I think maybe as you've said before, that you're going to have a perfect sense of justice. So you're going to reckon those people as they truly are, enemies of God and enemies of the faith, enemies of righteousness. But that doesn't mean that they're not your kin, right? They still are, right? And like so the best we can offer, like so Paul says, do not grieve as those who have no hope, speaking about those who've fallen asleep in Christ. But what about those who haven't? Like how do you grieve hopefully about people who have departed the faith? It's like, well, maybe that's what God does,
Yeah, I think so. So let's disagree about this question then. Does God always get what he wants? And tease that out for me.
So I think I was thinking about how there's ambiguity in the term wants, right? So we often operate with competing desires. So I desire to eat chocolate, but I also desire not to get fat, right? And so one desire trumps the other. So in a sense, when I have competing desires, it's impossible for me to get what I want. But my highest desires, I will always get what I want, because those are the things that I pursue at the cost of my lower desires. So if I were to say God always gets what he wants, I would mean it in that sense.
So what's God's highest desire? Sorry,
I don't know, but he always gets it. He always gets it. So what you can't say that he desires all men to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. You can't say that.
Well,
under my paradigm.
So okay, I was like, you can say that because the Bible says that.
No, I mean that it would be his highest desire.
Like the highest desire. Because relevant to this discussion is mercy and judgment, right?
Right.
So I desire mercy and not judgment, which would seem to mean that God's mercy triumphs over his judgment, as in like his competing desires, right?
Right, and isn't it in the Psalm somewhere, or maybe in Solomon somewhere? Mercy, I think it's Ecclesiastes. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Yeah. I mean, this feels to me like hairy ground to walk on. Difficult. That's not the right word for it. Icy, slippery ground.
Walking all over David Buchs' body.
Pipe down. But okay, because so just to be clear, this notion of higher and lower desires, I'm positing that as something that's human. I don't know if that's true of God, right? Whether that holds of God, seems to make sense to me. Like, so his desire, or maybe you even would say like the necessity for justice, is only trumped by mercy, but that mercy is not like, it doesn't do away with justice. All right.
Yep.
So he actually does get both things.
So he has his cake and he eats it too, and he doesnn't gain weight.
Give me your take on all of this. How would you answer the question? Does God always get what he wants?
So I'm willing to accept the paradox. So I would think the Calvinist view would be God always gets what he wants no matter what, and they would put that under the doctrine of sovereignty, right? So God is in control, even, and I accept that, of course. Doctrine of sovereignty is great, providence, all of that. God always provides. That's true. Problem is when it's super pervasive in every area of your theology, like election. So we're going to take that whole thing, and then God always gets what he wants. So if people go to hell, that means that God willed them. He wanted them to go there.
Right.
Argument follows, right? And this is where the Lutherans have a big disagreement with the Reformed. We say, no, we agree there is election, but it's a singular election, not a double predestination. So he certainly wills people, he elects them to eternity. That's what he wants. But his ultimate desire is not to send anybody to hell, right? So Ezekiel, I desire not the death of the wicked. But then what happens? The wicked still die. And Jesus wails over Jerusalem, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that stoned the prophets. How often I would have gathered you as a hen gathers her chicks under her wing, but you were not willing." And I think this is really a cosmic drama because God desires to save us, but the only thing that rivals the will of God is the will of humanity, which God put in us.
Right. Yeah. So I was thinking about the predicament, if you will, that God has placed himself in, which is this is odd. And this is why the Calvinists don't understand it, is because they try to systematize God into a rational system. Like, so I would desire all my kids to come and eat dinner with me, but I also desire that, nobody come to dinner with, mud all over their face. Right, so I have both of these things are true, and if one kid insists on not washing his face, this isn't an actual rule in our house, but whatever. If he comes with a unwashed face, he's keeping himself from the dinner table by the exercise of his will, right? And it's contrary to my will. So there you go.
My question for you is, I've read all these things, Elizabethan era or Victorian era stuff about people washing their face before going to dinner, and I've never washed my face before going to dinner.
Neither have I. Nobody in our house has ever done it before. I don't know why it came to my mind.
What does that look like? This sounds like Pharisaical hand washing to me. I don't understand. Am I weird? Am I disgusting?
It's a purity test, is what it is. So, yeah.
Do you put oil on your head?
Does it look like I do?
Well, Jesus tells us when we fast, right? Oh, put oil on your head. So I'm missing something quintessential about my faith.
That's right. That's what it is.
Does shampoo count? But doesn't shampoo take the oils off? I'm confused.
Yeah. Also, your hard water that causes problems. So.
Did you notice a drastic change in your budget when you went bald? Because shampoo's expensive.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, no, I still use really high quality shampoo for the few hairs that I've got because I want them to be happy and healthy. That's the goal here.
They look great. Okay, did you hold on to your question? Do you remember it?
Yeah. So about dates, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just curious if you can discern anything significant here. Striking to me how precise the dates are for Noah in the 600th. So he had, after his 500th year, he had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then in the 600th year, the second month, the 17th day of the month, the rain starts. And I went through and made a little chart here because you can plot this. We're dealing with a 12-month year with 30 days per month. That's the cycle we're dealing with. 12-month year, 30 days per month. The rain starts, it goes for 40 days, and then you've got another 110 days before the waters begin to abate. 74 days, and the mountaintops appear. 40 days, and then he sends out the raven and the dove. 7 days for dove number 2, 7 days for dove number 3, 36 days for the ground is dry, and then 56 days for exiting the ark. 370 days total, right? So it's a full year plus 10 days from entering the ark to exiting the ark. And it's just, given that up to this point, the only kind of precision we've had with time has been the number of years that a man lived and nothing about months. This is shocking to me.
Well, all these numbers are fairly significant, right?
Certainly 40 and 7 and 36. 56, you could get 7 times 8. That's pretty nice. 74 is a little bit unclear to me. That one's a tricky one.
Well, that's good because we know 70, and you agree with me that 72 is just a textual variant of 70, right?
Yeah,
Same
that's right.
same number, or because 72 would be 6 times 12. Ooh, and then you add two animals. There you go. See, 2 by 2, that's 4. So 70 plus 4.
Okay.
This is really easy.
This is super easy.
Yeah, and then obviously, so 600. This is meant to be seen as a new creation, right? Creation in 6 days. So then you just multiply it out times 100 because you're redoing it.
Okay. Okay. That's good.
I what does strike me is that everything is put in relation to Noah's lifespan. So this is the new timeline we're looking at. So this is strangely Christological. So how do we count our years in relation to a man, a particular man, Jesus Christ? And this is the same thing with Noah then.
Just like, I mean, I love thinking about that. How much time passed after they got off the ark where like it just was passe to say back before the flood, or back back before the ark.
When did we start saying things like post diluvian?
Right. Right.
I also wonder this question: what are they going to talk about our era in 300 years? So right now we're saying we're postmodern, and modernity was 100 years ago, and pre-modernity was everything before that. Well, before the Enlightenment. I mean, isn't that awfully arrogant? First of all, to claim that you're living after modernity, like you're the advanced people.
Right. Right. Yes, it's got to be that we are characterized entirely by instantaneous global communication, right? So like we're the um
The information age.
yeah, I mean that's got to be it. And then there's gonna be stages in that information age. We already have them, right? Like we've got misinformation and disinformation, and I was thinking about how it used to be not so much that Walter Cronkite actually reported the news, as everybody says, but that everybody got their news from Walter Cronkite. And now we have this, like you can have content producers with a thousand viewers, like 1,000 subscribers, producing content, and there you've got this little microcosm, and you'd multiply that by 600,000 times, and you've got the population of the globe.
Right. That's giving me a headache. I think about this too. So we categorize everything in decades, particularly in the 20th century. So if I say the 70s, orange shabby carpet, just like your church fellowship hall, right? That screams 1970s.
And 1980
And
is what the year was on that, but yeah, same difference.
you guys were like 5 years behind the 70s, so that makes
As
that
we
makes
are in Minnesota.
sense.
Minnesota's always a little behind. Yeah.
But there's a clear thing in your mind, right? If I say 80s, you think disco music, hair metal bands, 90s booming economy, but then metal music really comes into the foray. So did we always do this, or do we just think on such a micro scale that we're not able to get the big picture?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, so helpful is that like generations are about 20 years, right? So we do segment our lives between like youth and adulthood. So it kind of like and past the point of your 20s and really quickly into your 30s, those those time spans blur together. So you're thinking about these discrete units of your children, your grandchildren, and so on. It makes sense that would be the fundamental unit. I would have said 20 if I was theorizing, but 10 is more manageable, isn't it?
Yep. Well, we'll have to ask some of the saints. There's another question to write down. I don't mind this whole writing down your questions because I think we're gonna read the Bible in heaven, don't you?
I think so. Oh man, yeah. What it'll be? I mean, that'll be great. It's like looking at old pictures. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and not just for nostalgic sake, but it's like, oh man, this is everything we missed. Now, here's the question: who's going to be leading Bible study in heaven?
I hope you are. I hope I can sit in on some of your Bible study in heaven. It's gonna be great.
Oh, that was really nice. I would have said somebody from the Bible, but you are too nice.
Why Josh does Canaan get cursed and not Ham?
Oh, okay, okay. We're just hopping into it. Well, it's all about the descendants, isn't it? So I don't make too much of this, but it's also this whole thing that God sees the timeline, so he knows where the promised land is, right? So it's going to be the land of the Canaanites, not the land of the Hamites, right? And so God sees the future oppression that they're gonna bring on, and so this is a prophecy. So how much of cursing is God actually imposing it on the people, which you have to reckon with, but how much also of it is just acknowledging that things are going to be really bad for you because of your own decisions?
Right, until the iniquity of the Amorites is complete. Right, you get what you want.
Right, God is totally justified in cursing them because he knows what's going to happen, and I think that's a great verse to point to. God's not arbitrarily destroying people. He's actually waiting until their iniquity is fulfilled. They deserved to be wiped out, and it would be unjust of God to just take their land. Do you buy that answer, or what do you take of the
Again,
curse on the
I'm
Canaanites
stuck.
rather than
I'm
Ham?
stuck on arbitrary. But I think I think I could put it this way. Um, his justice, his judgment his judgment is clear. So okay, so the reasons for God's judgment are evident. You're wicked, and we can see your wickedness. And so, in that sense, it does. We do not perceive it as arbitrary, because we can point to the reasons for God's judgment. You're wicked, therefore you're under God's judgment. But God's mercy is arbitrary under the same use of the word arbitrary, because we don't see the reasons for it.
Sure. So it's found in God himself.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's a kind of like a merciful thing, condescending thing, that we get to perceive the righteousness of God's judgment, and we can see it. The wicked get what they deserve.
So here's another thing I thought of looking at when we're going to have a lot of fun looking at the table of nations in Genesis 10, but there are other big time nations that come from Ham. So not just the Canaanites. So for example, the Egyptians also come from Ham's line. And yeah, Egypt for the most part is bad, but they look pretty good at the end of the book of Genesis, don't they? They seem to be God's chosen people. They got one of Jacob's son Joseph. He's sitting on the throne. Seems like they could go the distance. They could become God's people, of course, with Joseph reigning in their place.
Right. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, that'll be good. There's a lot to. That's another. It's like the genealogies, right? Well, it is a genealogy, but the devil's in the details.
Let me talk about one more thing, unless you want to revisit this next week. But hey, if they've gotten this far, they're gonna listen to this. Let's just briefly talk about the image of God, because this is a debated topic that I see Lutherans argue about all the time. Can we say that people are made in the image of God still?
You mean post fall? Do you still retain the image of God, or has it? Are you? How would you describe the alternative? Let me put it that way. Besides the image of God, what would it be?
Well, I mean, the image of Satan.
Okay, or maybe the image of Adam, the image of fallen Adam. Right. So the answer has to be similar to the answer to like, what is the status of human nature after the fall? Corrupted beyond recognition, but nonetheless still human. Right. So the image of God has been so distorted that it's unrecognizable, but it's still the image of God.
Right. And this gets to the formula of Concord, saying if we're going to use Aristotle's terms, we're not going to describe the substance of human nature as being sin, because that's taking it too far. It's an accident, not meaning like, oops, sorry, it happened. Although that is how it happened. Like it was an accident. So I think it would be fruitful sometime to trace all of the instances where Lutheran theology says, in order to talk about this thing, we need a new category, right? Because it's a different kind of accident than any other accident, where it can be so thoroughly corrupted that it's almost as if the substance has changed, but it hasn't, right? Right. And yep. So here's why I bring it up, because in Genesis 9, so this is post-fall, this is post-diluvian, post-flood, God says in Genesis 9, verse 6, For God made man in his own image. Now, you could say that's past tense. That's true. But why then would God be bringing it up now when he's instituting capital punishment? So part of it still has to be true.
Right. Right. Is it
Now, so
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I really like this distinction, and we do this in Lutheran theology all the time, but there is a broad picture, there's a wide sense of the image of God, and then there's the narrow sense. And when our confessions talk about it, yeah, we've lost the narrow sense as in original righteousness before God. I'm not saying that we're born righteously. Of course, we know that's not the case. That's the narrow sense. The wide sense, though, is that there's something even more generic about us as creatures being, and I like Aristotle's answers, being rational animals, right? We have the logos, we have reason.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the similar use of the term like children of God. So, of course, in a wide sense, in a broad sense, we are all children, we're all offspring of God. But in the narrow sense, I mean, Jesus makes it clear about the Jews at that, in John chapter 8, you are of your father the devil, right? And to those who believe in his name, he's given the right to become the children of God, right? So I'm thinking about the illustrations that are helpful for this. So like, for instance, the prodigal son, he is the son of his father, but he so resembles like a pig at the end of the tale that why even bother calling him the son of his father? He doesn't even regard himself as that, until his father reclaims him as his own.
Right. Well, that's a nice, hopeful place to stop. I think next week we should talk about the rainbow, but that's great.
And I think if, unless something else changes, we might have a guest with us next week. Might be Pastor Tim's debut on the podcast.
I thought it was going to be somebody famous.
No, not that Bruce Tim. Tune in next time for that, though.
All right. See you then.
I'm going to hit stop.